Just imagine for a moment the cosmic irony of the multiverse's most brilliantly cynical mind, Rick Sanchez, violently deposited into the suffocating grim darkness of the 40th millennium, the nightmare universe of Warhammer 40,000, where towering, impossibly vast cathedrals of machinery scrape the toxic sky, their spires built on a foundation of blind faith and forgotten knowledge, where the very atmosphere is thick with the cloying, choking scent of sanctified incense and heavy machine oil, causing his lungs to burn with a mixture of disgust and alcoholic fumes, the deafening, perpetual grinding of ancient, ritualistically maintained gears, threatening to drown out the perpetual, bitter stream of his own cynical, self-amused laughter. This is a galaxy consumed by fear, a place where the soulless, red-robed tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus, their bodies mostly cybernetic augmentations, would inevitably mistake his genius for a divine blessing from their machine god, the Kiar Omnissiah, demanding his incomprehensible knowledge with an insatiable mechanical hunger, while the zealous and terrifying Inquisition would clamor for his immediate execution, forcing his supreme, if often drunken intellect to find a path to survival in a stagnant, violent theocracy where genuine science has been replaced by religious fervor, where even a whisper of curiosity is immediately condemned as the gravest heresy, and where the very foundational laws of reality are bent to the whims of malevolent interdimensional gods that, quite frankly, should not and could not exist in a sane universe. The nightmare began with a flash of sickly, vibrant green light, a corrosive-looking energy that spat crackling, dangerous sparks across the impossibly thick, ancient metal floor of Forge World Riser, the dimensional breach stabilizing not into a clean, smooth transition, but a violently humming, imperfect circle that pulsed with uncontrolled, forbidden technology, through which stumbled the figure of Rick Sanchez, his white hair standing on end, his stained lab coat a jarring spot of color against the blood-red emergency glow of the chambers, his hands clutching a sparking, dying device and a disappointingly half-empty flask. Well, that could have gone significantly better, couldn't it? Rick muttered, his voice hoarse, wiping a droplet of spittle and perhaps a trace of alien goo from his chin, his specialized portal gun now sparking and fizzling in his grip, a catastrophe of technical failure that had catastrophically scrambled his coordinates and, most dangerously, completely severed his quantum entanglement with his home dimension, leaving him stranded far beyond his normal travel routes in this bizarre, claustrophobic, cathedral-like chamber, a grotesque blend of industrial functionality and paranoid religious reverence. Squinting through the haze, he observed the impossible architecture, gargantuan pistons pumping rhythmically like the mechanical hearts of a dying titan, while thick, choking incense fumes billowed from ornate burners and silent, augmented by servitors mindlessly shuffled past, their vacant eyes scanning the floor, prompting him to groan. Great. Just great. Another theocracy. You know, I was really hoping the infinite multiverse had fewer gods, and, by extension, fewer brain-dead idiots eager to worship them. A sudden, piercing, klaxon blare, a sound designed to generate immediate, existential dread, snapped his attention, and he quickly shoved the malfunctioning portal gun into a pocket, his genius immediately recognizing the threat. He needed to understand this place's power source, find a viable path to repair, and, above all else, avoid its inevitable twisted authorities. Massive, reinforced doors groaned open, their ancient hydraulics protesting, admitting a squad of perfectly synchronized, ominously red-robed figures whose faces were obscured by deep cowls, their metallic mechadendrites whipping nervously through the oily air, all led by the imposing, mostly mechanical figure of Magos Drespian, whose immense frame was a patchwork of bronze plating and cold steel. One of the figures immediately declared the detection of a Xenos energy signature and an unauthorized intruder, prompting Magos Drespian to step forward, his voice a synthesized, distorted monotone, translating through a vocalizer from pure binary code into a halting, archaic Gothic. Contain the anomaly. I sense technology of great, possibly forbidden potency. The Omnissiah has, in his infinite wisdom, delivered us a gift to be dissected and studied. Rick sighed, the familiar pattern of zealots instantly misinterpreting science as divinity grating on his nerves. Yet he sensed a unique, deeply dangerous technological fundamentalism in their measured movements and ritualistic rigidity. He attempted a disarming, condescending approach. Hey, robo-priests. Look, clearly there has been a colossal, universe-bending mistake. I'm just a traveler passing through your, lovely mechanical monastery or whatever the hell this oil-soaked nightmare is. Just point me towards your nearest available power source and I will be out of your circuits and back to my dimension before you can even finish the phrase, praise the, what did you call it again? The Omni, whatever. The Magos halted his followers with a quick metallic gesture, scanning Rick with a grid beam that felt invasive and cold, declaring the technology of absolutely unknown origin, possibly architect of the highest, most revered order, and instantly demanded his securement for the ritual of disassembly to determine the full extent of his knowledge, a chillingly sterile term for vivisection. Recognizing the instant, non-negotiable threat to his existence, Rick rejected the entire concept of disassembly, backing smoothly toward a service corridor while pulling out a quickly and expertly jury-rigged remote control, a universal override built from scavenged components he kept handy, and pressed the button with surgical precision, immediately hijacking the control systems of the nearest, largest servitor. The poor cyborg creature shrieked, an unnerving blend of human pain and electronic static, instantly turning its heavy weapon on the nearest tech priest, and a chaotic wave erupted as several more servitors fell under Rick's expertly corrupted programming. Heresy! Magos Drespian thundered, narrowly missing Rick with an energy blast from his staff, shrieking accusations of perverting the sacred tools of the machine god. Rick used the precious seconds of confusion to sprint down the corridor, the horrific sounds of heavy gunfire and agonizing mechanical screams echoing behind him, his mind racing with the observation that this vast technology, while capable of immense power, was utterly stagnant, ritualistically codified to the point of absurdity, and governed by a terrifying perversion of science that felt physically revolting. He knew, with absolute certainty, that he needed to repair his broken portal gun and escape these homicidal mechanical zealots before they had the chance to fulfill their promise and tear him apart in the name of their utterly fictional machine god. The service corridor opened onto a vast, echoing manufacturing floor, a space so enormous it was barely illuminated by the hanging lamps, where thousands of tech adepts toiled in endless shifts, mindlessly constructing weapons of absolutely terrifying destructive potential. Massive, city-leveling lasers, slow but armored vehicles of war, and heavy armor-penetrating ammunition for unimaginable guns. A grim civilization dedicated to the singular, unchanging purpose of perpetual warfare. Okay, so not just religious nuts, but incredibly militaristic religious nuts with a deeply disturbing fetish for needlessly giant guns, Rick muttered to himself, expertly ducking behind a massive cogwheel as the alarm and klaxons transitioned into a system-wide broadcast. Magos Drespian's unsynthesized, furious voice boomed through every Voxcaster lounge in the facility, alerting all servants of the Omniziah about a technological heretic who carries forbidden and corrupting knowledge and has maliciously corrupted the blessed servitors, demanding his immediate capture and secret extraction for the glory of Mars, their distant homeworld. Realizing that true stealth was impossible with thousands of zealously watching eyes, Rick decided he needed something more powerful than mere evasion. He needed decisive leverage. His genius quickly analyzed the tech priest's psychological weaknesses, their obsessive, almost worshipful reverence for machinery and knowledge, their entire society structured around the dogmatic acquisition and preservation of technology, and their unshakable belief in the divine force of the Omnissiah. A cruel, calculated smile twisted his lips as he formulated a plan that wasn't just about escape, but about shattering the very fragile foundation of their faith before he vanished. Slipping out of the shadow of the cogwheel, Rick approached an ancient, impossibly ornate Baroque cogitator terminal, an inherently inefficient and idiotic mix of imposing religious iconography and minimal functionality, and scoffed audibly at the primitive security layers, which bafflingly included ritualistic activation prayers, all of which he bypassed in seconds with a few expert keystrokes and a tiny, repurposed device. Accessing the central database and communication systems, a genuine chill went through him as he discovered the shocking truth. This was humanity's unimaginable future, thousands of years ahead, a dark, miserable age of superstition, unending genocide, and constant war, the Imperium of Man, spanning countless worlds, united only by their xenophobic hatred, meaning his casual disregard for their machine god, and his forbidden dimensional technology qualified him instantly as the ultimate alien, mutant, and heretic they were sworn to eradicate. Fantastic. I landed in the worst possible future timeline, he grumbled, downloading critical information about their tech and noting the profound, sick irony of this bureaucratic fascist theocracy compared to the relative sanity of the citadel of Rix. The data confirmed his theory. The Adeptus Mechanicus were technological guardians who slavishly preserved ancient knowledge without retaining a shred of understanding, codifying pure science into suffocating dogma, reserving their highest reverence for in-standard template constructs. STCS, the supposed pinnacle of a forgotten golden age, a ruthless plan crystallized. He would detonate their delusions before escaping. His damaged portal gun only required a misaligned dimensional calibrator and the quantum field generator recalibrated. But the necessary specialized parts required access to the Forge world's most holy, advanced laboratories. To gain that access, he had to become the one thing they desired more than anything, a prophet bearing the ultimate sacred knowledge. Rick activated the massive Vox system, his amplified voice echoing with booming authority across the entire facility. Attention all members of the YD, Adeptus Mechanicus. This is, Magos Rick, dimensional traveler, and more importantly, bearer of lost, high-order standard template constructs. I have come to share the single greatest technological revelation with your Forge world. Bring me immediately to your holiest manufacturing center, and I will personally demonstrate technology that will make your precious Omnissiah weep copious tears of sacred oil. This calculated, highly provocative gamble appealed perfectly to their deep-seated obsession with lost technology and their zealots' fundamental weakness for external validation. The immediate, deafening alarm ceased, replaced by an unnatural, terrified silence, followed by the heavy, echoing footfalls of the Magos and his guard returning. Magos Drespian immediately demanded he identify himself and his supposed STC, his voice laced with menace, warning him to prove his claim or face immediate, painful termination. Rick stepped out, hands raised in a gesture of exaggerated surrender, introducing himself as Rick Sanchez, the smartest man in any possible universe, claiming his STC, though not what they classified it as, makes your ancient relics look like children's toys, frankly. He held up his damaged portal gun, presenting it as if it were a holy relic, explaining that it effortlessly tears stable, clean holes in the very fabric of reality itself, allowing for instantaneous travel between dimensions. With pure, elegant science that even your alleged Omnissiah never came close to mastering. The Magos and the accompanying tech priests froze, their numerous augmented eyes focusing with an unnerving, single-minded, religious ecstasy, their mechadendrites twitching violently as Magos Drespian whispered in awe, "The Omnissiah provides." A traveler from beyond the materium bearing technology unknown even to the fabricator general on Mars. This, clearly, is a divine sign. Suppressing a triumphant smirk, Rick declared, "Yeah, a real miracle. Now here's the kicker. I need immediate access to your best, most advanced equipment to repair this thing and give you a full demonstration of its full capabilities. Unless, of course, you would rather explain to your fabricator general, or whoever the hell runs this mechanical circus, that you had the once-in-a-millennium chance to witness interdimensional travel technology and like the scared dogma-ridden fools you are, you chickened out." After a brief, heated binary debate among the Mechanicus where some shrieked, "heretic," and others pleaded, "too valuable to waste," the Magos finally turned back, his decision made, reluctantly agreeing to personally escort Rick to the Sanctum Machina, the holiest laboratory on the Forge world, to repair and demonstrate the device under heavy supervision, adding the inevitable, chilling warning that the penalty for any falsehood would be instantaneous death by rendering into base components and raw materials. Rick merely shrugged off the threat. "Sure, whatever floats your massive, terrifying mechanical boat. Just lead the way and try to keep the religious mumbo-jumbo to an absolute minimum. I find I work better when people aren't loudly chanting around me." As they proceeded deeper into the Forge world's core, Rick took the time to observe the Mechanicus's technology, which, while capable of immense destruction, was fundamentally primitive compared to his own, containing numerous, jarringly new elements, particularly their illogical concept of machine spirits, a nonsensical blend of rudimentary AI and deeply superstitious animism. The Sanctum Machina itself was a massive, echoing domed chamber, a chaotic blend of both recognizable and utterly alien technology, where building-sized cogitators hummed alongside delicate, powerful quantum-manipulating devices and tech priests performed maintenance rites that were explicitly part engineering and half religious ceremony. Rick demanded a quantum stabilizer, an atomic resequencer, and a decent high-output power source, adding, "And for the love of whatever, false gods you people worship, some actual privacy would be nice if you could manage it." The Magos stiffly insisted on observing the sacred rituals for the machine spirits during the repair process, to which Rick rolled his eyes dramatically. "Fine. You pray, I'll work. Just try to keep the religious ecstasy to a dull, manageable roar, okay?" As the ridiculous rituals began, Rick worked with a frightening, practiced, almost pianist-like efficiency, casually violating sacred mechanical precepts and handling the delicate, revered machine spirits with a total, absolute disregard for their sanctity, achieving results far beyond the capability of the Magos' own engine seers, much to the silent, terrified awe of the watching Mechanicus members. After several hours of focused, intense labor, the dimensional calibrator and quantum field generator were reconfigured, and the portal gun was humming, nearly operational, needing only a colossal burst of power. "Almost there," Rick announced, stretching with a satisfied groan. "Now I just need something with enough juice to power this baby up for the demonstration. Something like, I don't know, maybe whatever is powering this entire planet-sized facility." The Magos recoiled in immediate horror, declaring the Forge Heart sacred and the colossal plasma reactors sustaining their work utterly off-limits to any outsider, let alone a heretic. Rick, sighing dramatically, decided to appeal directly to the Magos' intellectual pride and overwhelming curiosity. "Look, I'm not asking to take it home with me. I just need to borrow some of your power for a 5-second life-changing demonstration. Unless, of course, you would rather explain to your fabricator general, or whoever runs this mechanical circus, that you had the chance to personally witness the miracle of interdimensional travel, and you chickened out because of a safety protocol." The psychological gambit worked perfectly, and the Magos reluctantly agreed to grant heavily guarded access to a secondary plasma reactor. The reactor chamber was, predictably, a cathedral dedicated entirely to nuclear power. Plasma glowing with the intense light of a captive sun, with a dozen engine seers contending to it like high priests, monotonously singing binary hymns to appease the supposed machine spirit. "Now this is what I'm talking about," Rick said, approaching the main controls. "Just stand back, all of you, and prepare to have your mechanical minds blown into tiny little oil-soaked pieces." He connected his portal gun with the reactor's primary output, instantly bypassing every single safety protocol and every religious circuit breaker with casual, practiced ease, while the tech priests gasped in utter, collective horror at the sheer violation of their sacred operational codes. "Ladies, gentlemen, and whatever gender you assign to your glorified toasters, prepare for the demonstration of a lifetime," Rick announced, raising the now fully charged portal gun. "Interdimensional travel, without all that messy, unpredictable warp business you seem so strangely fond of." He pulled the trigger, and a swirling emerald green portal opened, not into a terrifying void, but into a calm, verdant, unindustrialized forest, a sight so utterly alien to this dark galaxy that several younger adepts instantly fell to their knees in paralyzed, genuine, religious rapture. "Impossible," Magos Drespian whispered, his voice trembling, asking, "Travel without the warp, without Geller fields, without navigators?" The Omnisaya never spoke of such technology in all his wisdom. "Yeah, about your Omnisaya," Rick replied, a cruel, triumphant smile spreading across his face. "I've got some genuinely bad news for you, gearheads. If your machine god was so all-knowing, how come he never figured this basic concept out? Pretty basic interdimensional physics, really. A first-year student in my dimension could grasp the fundamental principles. The sheer, raw blasphemy hung in the air, instantly freezing the augmented minds of the Aztec priests as they mentally struggled with the devastating theological implications. The Magos, his massive augmented body trembling with an almost seismic religious fury, finally responded, "Enough. Your blasphemy will not be tolerated for a second longer. This device must be an extension of his divine plan, unknown to us until now. Guards, seize this heretic and prepare him for immediate mind extraction. His knowledge will serve the Omnisaya whether he wills it or not." Rick, having predicted this exact outcome with absolute certainty, quickly changed the portal's destination coordinates. replacing the calming forest with a churning, swirling interdimensional void filled with mind-bending, non-Euclidean shapes and impossible colors. "I really wouldn't do that if I were you, old man," Rick warned, his finger hovering over the firing trigger. "This portal is currently set to release the raw, volatile energy from a dimension where the laws of physics simply don't function. One single squeeze of this trigger and I flood this entire chamber with radiation that will instantly fry every circuit, every implant, and every piece of delicate tech in your cyborg bodies. Your precious machine spirits will not, I repeat, will not survive the exposure." The Magos, his augmented brain calculating the catastrophic immediate risk, reluctantly asked, "What is it that you truly want, heretic?" Rick revealed his simple, devastating demand. "What I want is simple, and it's something you can't give me willingly. I want to show your entire Forge world the truth. Hook me up to your main Vox network. Let me broadcast my findings to every cogitator and data terminal in this entire facility. Let your tech priests and your servitors hear exactly what I have to say, and then, and only then, I will leave peacefully through my portal, never to return to your dreary, war-obsessed, and frankly pathetic dimension." When the Imagos asked what the consequences would be if they refused this utterly unreasonable demand, Rick shrugged nonchalantly. "Then I release enough interdimensional energy to turn this reactor and a significant chunk of your entire Forge world into a smoking radioactive crater. I die, you die, everybody dies, and nobody learns anything. Seems like a tragic waste of perfectly good science, doesn't it?" After a brief, frenzied conference in rapid, heated binary, the Magos reluctantly agreed but delivered a final, grim warning. "You will have your audience, heretic, but know this, whatever ideological damage your blasphemous words may cause, the Mechanicus will endure. Faith in the Omnissiah has survived for 10,000 years. It will not be undone by one single-dimensional traveler." Rick snorted with contempt. "Yeah, we'll just see about that, won't we?" Within the next hour, Rick was standing before the massive Ovoxcaston system, ready to transmit his message to tens of thousands of minds, fully acknowledging the enormous potential for absolute ideological chaos. "Citizens of the Adeptus Mechanicus," Rick began, his voice amplified to an unnatural, commanding pitch. "My name is Rick Sanchez, interdimensional traveler and, unequivocally, the smartest being you will ever encounter. Today I'm going to tell you something your leaders have desperately tried to keep from you. The truth. The cold, hard truth about your Omnissiah, the real nature of your technology, and the prison of manufactured ignorance you have so slavishly built around yourselves." Holding up his portal gun and projecting its full schematics onto every nearby display, he explained that the device allows stable, safe travel between dimensions without using your volatile, demonic warp, utilizing just pure, elegant science that your ancestors once understood before they decided that rigorous thinking was too difficult and performing empty ritual was far easier. He patiently explained the device's principles in clear, simple, and utterly blasphemous terms, deliberately stripping away every layer of manufactured mystery, detailing precisely how the quantum field interacts with space-time and how the calibrator selects destinations, concepts that were technically within the Mechanicus' theoretical understanding, but had been successfully buried beneath millennia of religious obfuscation. Your standard template constructs? Those relics you worship with such desperate fervor, they are nothing more than simple instruction manuals created by people who actually understood the science. There is nothing remotely divine about them. The machine spirits you revere, they are simply primitive, self-regulating artificial intelligences designed to monitor systems automatically. You have turned routine maintenance procedures into religious ceremonies, desperately mistaking simple correlation for causation when your rituals appear to appease these so-called spirits. Now, he continued, raising his voice, the real tragedy is that humanity in this timeline had the potential for genuine, unimaginable greatness. Your so-called dark age of technology was just the timid beginning of what you could have achieved. But then, you collectively got scared. You saw the inherent dangers of unrestricted artificial intelligence, of unregulated technological development, and instead of finding a necessary balance, you retreated into blind superstition and self-imposed fear, and you have wallowed in it for 10,000 years. Rick's voice filled with a profound contempt for the galaxy's wasted potential. You could be literal gods by now. Not the false, pathetic gods you worship, but beings of such staggering technological advancement that no hostile force in this pathetic galaxy could ever threaten you. Instead, you fight endless, miserable wars with weapons you barely understand against enemies who relentlessly exploit the massive, gaping holes in your knowledge. Even as he spoke, alarm reports flooded into the Magos' console. Tech priests were removing sacred, restrictive implants. Engineers were loudly questioning established protocols, and multiple assembly lines were grinding to a halt as workers passionately debated the theological implications of Rick's words. Magos Drespian, his fury renewed, tried desperately to cut the Voxcastine, screaming, "Enough! Your heresy spreads like a virulent plague through our sacred forge. This ends now." But Rick was one step ahead, twisting the portal gun settings to open a tiny, focused portal directly into the Voxcastine's power supply, neatly bypassing the Magos' attempt to silence him. "See that?" Rick's voice continued, a chilling testament to his genius. "That is what real technological mastery looks like. Not frantic prayers to fictional machine spirits, not ritualistic, pointless button pressing, but truly understanding the fundamental principles of the universe and bending them violently to your will." He turned to the assembled EHM tech priests. "You want to know the real tragedy? The knowledge you have lost is basic compared to what I carry in my brain. And yet, you choose ignorance. Though the Magos finally succeeded in cutting the power by physically destroying the main conduit, the devastating seeds of doubt had been planted across the entire Forge world, and 10,000 years of absolute faith were now being violently re-examined. "You have doomed us all, heretic," Magos Drespian said, his voice now flat with utter despair. "Without unquestioning faith in the Omnissiah, the Mechanicus cannot function. Doubt is the first unforgivable step toward tech heresy, and tech heresy leads inevitably to abominations that could destroy humanity itself." Rick scoffed. "Oh, please. That is the last desperate argument every religious leader on every planet says when their absolute control is threatened. Without blind faith in our ancient dogma, society will instantly collapse into chaos. It's the last pathetic refuge of those who cannot defend their ridiculous beliefs with reason, knowledge, or, God forbid, actual science." The Magos raised his staff, energy crackling ominously, declaring that Rick must be instantly destroyed and everyone who had heard his words must undergo a full memory, purging to contain the ideological damage. Rick merely raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, good luck with that, old-timer. You can't unring this particular bell, Magos. The truth is out there now, spreading through your Forge world like an unstoppable virus. And here's the best part. Even if you manage to kill me, even if you successfully mind-wipe every single person who heard me today, the questions will remain. Once people start asking why they perform rituals instead of understanding principles, there is absolutely no going back." To punctuate his statement, the chamber doors burst open, and a small group of tech priests, their restrictive red robes now discarded, entered, led by a young adept whose eyes burned with the brilliant, terrifying fire of revelation. The young priest declared, "Magos Drespian, we have verified the stranger's claims through independent, forbidden testing. The ritual of activation for the plasma inductors is utterly unnecessary. The machine responds to correct input, not to prayer. The Omnissiah is not as we have been tragically taught." "Heresy!" The Magos roared, spinning his staff toward the rebellious priests. In the ensuing chaos, Rick saw his perfect opportunity. His portal gun was fully charged, and the coordinates were set for a dimension far, far away. This Forge world was about to descend into a violent civil war. Although he felt a profound satisfaction over the ideological bomb he'd successfully detonated, he recognized the familiar pattern of inevitable destruction that always follows him. As the Magos fired on the rebels, Rick slipped smoothly toward the edge of the chamber. "Well, it's been a blast shattering your entire worldview and all, but I think this is my cue to make a graceful exit. Best of luck with your sudden crisis of faith. Try not to blow up your planet over it, okay?" Rick raised the portal gun, but before he could fire, a last-ditch energy blast from the Magos' staff struck the delicate device, instantly short-circuiting the interdimensional technology and causing the portal to form and collapse in unstable, angry red pulses. "No, no, no, you idiot!" Rick screamed, frantically trying to stabilize the malfunctioning device. "Do you have any idea what happens when you disrupt a portal in mid-formation with an unknown energy blast? A massive, Concussive energy discharge instantly knocked everyone off their feet, the portal expanding and contracting wildly with painful, angry red pulses as reality itself began to warp and groan. "You fool!" Rick shouted, scrambling up, his voice filled with genuine terror. "This wasn't me, you mechanical zealot. This is what happens when you fire unstable energy weapons at delicate interdimensional technology. The portal is now catastrophically unstable, creating a vacuum effect that will grow stronger until it instantly collapses this entire facility into a dimensional sinkhole." The Magos, staring in frozen horror, demanded to know if this was Rick's final, ultimate vengeance. Rick worked frantically on the controls, shouting back, "This isn't vengeance, this is physics, you moron. This is what happens when science is treated like dogma. The portal is unstable, creating a vacuum that will grow exponentially unless we stop it." All around them, the chamber visibly distorted, massive metal support beams bent and snapped, and cogitators imploded as reality warped, violently pulling several fleeing tech priests toward the terrifying event horizon. The Magos, his religious zeal completely replaced by genuine primordial fear, demanded, "How do we stop it, heretic?" "Stop it? The best we can realistically hope for is containing it before it grows large enough to swallow the entire planet," Rick said, his voice bitter. "I need a massive, focused electromagnetic pulse to disrupt the portal's energy signature, followed by a controlled implosion to seal the breach." The Magos surprisingly, suggested the sacred neutron purger in the lower levels, a massive device that generates a powerful electromagnetic pulse against scrap code incursions. Rick acknowledged it might work, but he would need to dangerously modify it to target the tear's specific dimensional frequency, and they had to move immediately as the tear was growing exponentially. The two unlikely temporary allies, the cynical scientist and the terrified zealot, raced through the buckling corridors, pursued by the terrifying growing distortion, as sheer panic spread among the fleeing servitors and tech priests. They reached the massive neutron purger chamber, and Rick immediately set to work, expertly reconfiguring the ancient monumental technology with a speed and intuitive understanding that utterly astounded the Magos. "Hand me that quantum regulator now," Rick ordered, pointing to a misidentified component, his eyes fixed on the device. "And stop praying, for God's sake, it's not helping. If your Omnissiah was listening, we wouldn't be in this horrifying mess in the first place." The Magos, his religious certainty irrevocably shaken, complied instantly, handing over the part. He warned Rick that if they survived, the heretic would still answer for the damage done to their sacred faith. Rick snorted as he violently rerouted power and bypassed all safety systems. "If we survive this, maybe you should be thanking me for showing you just how much more your technology could accomplish without all the idiotic religious baggage weighing it down." The neutron purger came to life with a terrifying shriek, its energy output climbing far past its design capabilities, bathing the chamber in a searing blue glow. "This is going to be incredibly close," Rick warned, his voice tight. "The pulse needs to match the dimensional frequency exactly, or it could make the tear even more unstable. And even if it works, the inevitable backlash is going to instantly fry every single piece of unshielded technology in a 100-meter radius, including most of your augmetics." The Magos hesitated only for a microsecond. "If it saves the Forge world, then so be it. The flesh is weak, but it can be rebuilt. Do it, heretic." Rick allowed himself a small, rare smile. "Maybe there is hope for you gearheads after all. All right, brace yourself, old man. This is going to genuinely hurt." With the final precise adjustment, Rick activated the modified neutron purger, and a colossal wave of electromagnetic energy exploded outward, violently colliding with the unstable portal's energy signature, shaking the entire forge to its foundations. The dimensional tear contracted violently, reality snapping back into place with a punishing secondary shockwave that instantly fried all nearby technology, leaving much of the Magos' augmentics dead and sparking. Rick himself was thrown hard against the far wall, his portal gun, though smoking and further damaged by the pulse, remained mercifully intact. A sudden deep silence fell as systems slowly rebooted, and Rick pulled himself up, coughing, to survey the damage, finding the Magos alive, though many of his vital augmentics were now inactive. "Well, that was certainly exciting, wasn't it?" Rick commented, brushing off the dust. "Your forge is saved. The dimensional tear is sealed, and only a few dozen of your followers were pulled into the void between realities. I'd call that a definite win, all things considered." The Magos, his voice a barely audible, flat monotone, looked at the damage. "The damage to the forge, to our faith will be substantial. Rick nodded, and maybe that's exactly what this place needs. A little less blind faith, a little more rational understanding. You have the fundamental capacity for greatness, you know. Humanity always does in every dimension I visit. You just need to stop being so utterly terrified of your own potential. Examining his badly damaged portal gun, Rick estimated it had enough residual charge for exactly one more desperate jump to escape before the Mechanicus Maidailers inevitably organized their full vengeance. I would genuinely love to stay and help you rebuild your pathetic society with a more rational, scientific approach to technology, Rick said, making final, essential adjustments. But let's be honest, neither of us would enjoy that process. You've got your galaxy-spanning religious empire. I've got a multiverse of adventures and booze waiting. Best we part ways while we're still, technically, on speaking terms. The Magos managed to point a partially functioning mechadendrite at Rick. You have unleashed forces you cannot comprehend, heretic. The Mechanicus will hunt you across the stars for what you have done this day. Rick laughed, genuinely amused. Good luck with that, pal. The multiverse is infinite, Margos. And trust me, I've managed to thoroughly piss off far more dangerous, powerful entities than your pitiful cyborg priesthood. He aimed the portal gun, adding, besides, you've got bigger, immediate problems to worry about, like explaining to your fabricator general how you lost control of an entire forge world to a man in a lab coat with a serious drinking problem. As if on cue, the IVOX system crackled back to life, broadcasting immediate, frantic reports of tech priests questioning dogma, engineers conducting unauthorized experiments, and even servitors displaying unexpected independence as the Mechanicus's hierarchical control fractured entirely. Listen to that, Rick said, gesturing to the Yizar. Vaso, that's the sound of thousands of minds waking up. Scary, isn't it? Almost as scary as blind, unquestioning obedience. The portal gun hummed, creating one final, desperately stable dimensional tear, showing a beautiful, far more innocent dimension far removed from the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, a place with peaceful blue skies and no religious zealots seeking to dissect him. Well, it's been real. Margos, Rick said, stepping toward the portal. Try not to turn this into another miserable crusade, okay? You guys seriously have enough of those already. But before he could step through, the chamber doors violently burst open, and a squad of heavily armed Skitarii warriors entered, weapons instantly trained on Rick, followed by a figure who caused even the cynical scientist to pause. A newcomer standing twice the height of a normal human, clad in gleaming Baroque crimson power armor, his face obscured by a golden impassive mask, his voice carrying the crushing, absolute weight of technological mastery and unquestioned, ruthless authority. Giyu, secure the heretic. The crimson giant commanded, his voice a chilling echo in the ruined chamber. By immediate order of Inquisitor Kronos of the Ordo Hereticus, this entire forge world is now placed under full investigation for tech heresy and possible warp contamination. The damaged Magos attempted to rise, weakly protesting that this was an internal matter and the Inquisition had no jurisdiction without explicit approval from Mars. The Inquisitor's laugh was cold and utterly chilling. When a forge world descends into open systemic heresy, old alliances become conveniently flexible. Magos. Your superiors on Mars were most cooperative when informed of the situation. They seemed particularly interested in the volatile technology this stranger carries. Rick quickly assessed the Inquisitor, a being radiating danger, accustomed to absolute power and unquestioned authority, precisely the kind of authority Rick has spent a lifetime undermining. Hey there, big guy, Rick said irreverently. Love the armor. Very aggressively compensatory. Let me guess, you're this dimension's heavily armored version of the religious police? Got a problem with basic free thought, do we? The Inquisitor's attention focused on Rick with terrifying intensity. So this is the source of the ideological contamination. A single heretic who nearly destroyed a forge world with his blasphemy. Impressive, if utterly damnable. What can I say? I'm a thought leader wherever I go. Rick shrugged, feigning boredom. It's both a blessing and a curse, mostly for people like you who prefer their populations ignorant and compliant. The Inquisitor approached, his every movement deliberate and threatening. The Ordo Hereticus has encountered beings like you before, traveler. Creatures that slip between realities, spreading systemic corruption and chaos. Your technology will be instantly confiscated and thoroughly studied. Your knowledge will be painfully extracted. Then, you will be cleansed with the holy flame of purification. Rick raised his portal gun, aimed precisely at the dimensional tear. Yeah, that sounds like a really tempting offer, but I'm going to have to pass on the whole holy fire thing. It's terribly bad for the complexion. The Inquisitor raised a massive hand, and the Skitarii took aim. You profoundly misunderstand, heretic. This was not a negotiation or an offer. The knowledge you carry is far too dangerous to be allowed to escape. If you attempt to flee, my warriors will fire, and while that may kill you, your technology will remain here for the glory of the Imperium. Rick's eyes narrowed, recognizing the perfectly executed trap, but he'd never encountered a cage he couldn't dismantle with a combination of sheer genius and moral flexibility. All right, you got me. Rick sighed, lowering the portal gun slightly in a gesture of surrender. Clearly, I'm completely outmatched by your fancy armor and your terrifying radiation guns. How about we make a pragmatic deal? I'll share some of my advanced technological insights with you. You let me live and go free. Everybody wins, clean and simple. The Inquisitor stated, without emotion, "The Inquisition does not make deals with heretics or the fundamentally impure." Rick smiled, the expression utterly devoid of warmth. That's a real shame, because I think you'd be very interested in what I have to say about your Emperor. The sheer blasphemous reference tensed every soldier and priest in the room. What could a dimensional traveler possibly know of the God Emperor? The Inquisitor demanded, his voice dangerously low. Rick's smile widened to a predatory grin. Oh, you would be incredibly surprised what you can learn. Hopping between dimensions, the multiverse has a way of showing you the real, much bigger picture. Like the inconvenient fact that your precious Emperor is just another powerful, tragic being caught in the same philosophical trap as the rest of you, a victim of forces beyond even his own legendary understanding. This was a calculated, final gamble, using the information he'd absorbed about the Emperor being worshipped as an actual god, knowing that any suggestion of him being less than divine was the ultimate, unforgivable heresy. The Inquisitor took another deliberate step, his power armor humming with contained energy. Your blasphemies compound with every word, heretic. The Emperor is the master of mankind, the savior of humanity, the one true god of our species. Rick scoffed. The one true god? Please, I have met dozens of beings calling themselves gods. Some were advanced aliens with powerful tech. Others were interdimensional entities literally feeding on worship. Not one of them deserved the title. And your Emperor? Just another incredibly powerful psyker who fundamentally bit off far more than he could chew, and now a whole galaxy is paying the price for his mistake. Just as the Inquisitor prepared to give the execution order, Rick made his move with impossible speed, firing the portal gun not at the existing portal, but at the feet of the Skitarii warriors. A new, small, swirling dimensional tear instantly opened, a fast-moving vortex that dropped the soldiers into a temporary, harmless pocket dimension Rick used for volatile waste storage, trapping them for at least a few hours before depositing them back, disoriented but alive. I really should have led with that move, Rick commented, watching the last warrior disappear. But where's the fun in solving problems immediately and cleanly? The Inquisitor, however, reacted with unnerving, inhuman speed, sidestepping the localized trap and grabbing Rick's throat with his power-armored ball gauntlet, lifting the scientist completely off the ground with terrifying, crushing ease. Enough games, the Inquisitors growled, tightening his grip with bone-breaking force. Your pathetic technology is wasted on one so irreverent and base. The Imperium will put it to far better use in service to the Emperor. Rick struggled for a desperate breath, his hand reaching into his lab coat for a final, small, utterly unimpressive last resort device. A simple metal cylinder with a single activation button, a device built after a traumatic encounter with a vindictive hive mind to temporarily overload any collective consciousness or technologically enhanced neural network. You know what your only problem is? Rick gasped, his face paling. You, and all your kind, in this miserable galaxy, you tragically confuse faith with understanding. You worship what you fundamentally fear instead of mastering it with knowledge. The Inquisitor demanded what Rick understood that they did not. Rick smiled through the pain. The fundamental weakness of religious fanaticism, you inflexible fool. You care far more about orthodoxy and ritual than you do about survival, innovation, or truth. With his last remaining strength, Rick pressed the button, instantly short-circuiting the Inquisitor's complex neural links and machine-spirit interfaces, causing the golden mask to go completely dark and the heavy power-assisted joints to lock solid. Rick dropped to the floor, gasping for air as the paralyzed gauntlet released him. Neural disruption pulse, he explained, holding the tiny device up to the immobilized Inquisitor. Designed specifically for technologically enhanced nervous systems. Your fancy armor is now just a really expensive, tragically immobile coffin, at least for the next hour or so. Retrieving his portal gun, Rick turned to the original dimensional tear, which was violently fluctuating, giving him only moments before it collapsed completely. The Magos, watching from the floor, warned that when the Inquisition recovered, they would declare exterminatus rather than risk Rick's heresies spreading any further. Rick paused at the portal's edge, struck by the sheer, tragic, stubborn adherence to ignorance in this dimension. You know, it doesn't have to be this way, old man, Rick said with a rare, fleeting note of sincerity that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Your ancestors built wonders that would put my technology to shame. They traveled between stars without worshipping their engines. They created artificial intelligence without calling them machine spirits. They understood the universe instead of pathetically fearing it. He gestured to the ruined chamber. All of this, your entire, miserable Imperium, is built on the ruins of actual human achievement and enlightenment. You could still reclaim that legacy if you chose simple understanding over destructive dogma, curiosity over paralyzing fear. The Magos crackled. And unleash another age of strife, another Men of Iron rebellion. The restrictions exist for a reason, heretic, a very good reason. Rick nodded. Maybe they did once. But 10,000 years of complete, absolute stagnation? That's not cautious governance, that's intellectual surrender. And from what I've seen of your terrifying enemies, surrender is a luxury you cannot afford. The dimensional tear pulsed urgently, and Rick took one last, contemptuous look at the profound chaos he'd successfully created. Good luck, Magos. Try not to let them burn your world. Knowledge is always worth saving, even the knowledge of precisely how wrong you have been all these miserable centuries. With those final devastating words, Rick Sanchez stepped through the rapidly shrinking dimensional tear, vanishing completely in a final brilliant flash of green energy as the portal collapsed and evaporated behind him, leaving a Forge world in immediate, violent turmoil. Its faith shattered, its ancient certainties fundamentally challenged, and its future terrifyingly uncertain. In the silent chamber, the damaged Magos looked at the frozen Inquisitor and, for the first time in centuries, allowed himself to consciously entertain the heretical thought. What if the stranger had actually been right? The thought was immediately, violently suppressed, but like an ideological virus, it remained, waiting to resurface and replicate. Across 3D Forge World Riser. Similar thoughts were taking root, with profound questions whispered in the shadows of the great machines and forbidden experiments that violated sacred protocols being conducted in secret laboratories. The dangerous seeds of a true technological renaissance, or perhaps a galaxy-shattering catastrophe, had been planted. And somewhere in the infinite, chaotic multiverse, Rick Sanchez took a long, restorative swig from his flask, already happily forgetting the dimension of religious zealots and endless war that he had just left behind. There were countless realities to explore, countless more adventures awaiting the smartest man in the multiverse, but in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, where there was tragically only war, his brief, chaotic visit had changed everything forever. For knowledge once gained could never truly be forgotten, and a seed of doubt once planted could never be fully uprooted. Deep in the core of the Forge world, a young, anonymous tech priest held a tiny piece of Rick's discarded technology, a simple power coupling that he had replaced during the hasty repairs, studying it with an intense focus that would have been declared instantly heretical just days before. The device was laughably simple by Rick's standards, but to the tech priest, it represented something truly revolutionary, a beautiful, frightening glimpse of what human ingenuity could achieve when completely freed from the oppressive shackles of dogma and fear. With slow, trembling but resolute hands, the young tech priest began to carefully disassemble the coupling, not with ritual and prayer, but with genuine, rational curiosity and an overwhelming desire to finally understand, and in that one simple, blasphemous act of inquiry, the chaotic legacy of Rick Sanchez finally lived on.